Hi there, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie. We're the owners of Hired Hand Software.
And this is Season 6 of our From the Pasture podcast. For more than 15 years, we've been helping breeders promote their pedigree livestock with our easy-to-use, animal management-driven website software.
Each week, we bring you stories from the pasture, breeding philosophies, ranch traditions, cattle knowledge, and conversation with folks using Hired Hand to power their livestock marketing.
So settle in for today's episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. Welcome back to From the Pasture. I'm your host, Molly Clubb, and today we're visiting Mike Crawford, a longtime Texas Longhorn breeder with a unique background in marketing, education, and innovation within the breed. Mike brings a business-minded perspective to Longhorns, from early decisions around branding and domains to launching a beef program and even opening up his own processing facility. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Molly, thank you for having me.
Well, let's start at the beginning. How did you first get involved with Texas Longhorns, and what drew you into the breed?
Okay, so it's pretty interesting. I for whatever reason, I thought I was going to be. I watched too many John Wayne movies when I was younger, so I thought it was kind of important. It was going to be a cool thing to have a ranch. So I bought a ranch, and my wife Pam. A few years went by, and my wife Pam, who graduated from the University of Texas in Austin, I was scratching my head trying to figure out what I get her for her birthday that particular year, and I ended up buying 2 Longhorns for her on that particular birthday, and that's how I got in the breed.
So tell me a little bit about those Longhorns. Did she get to name them? Were they registered? Were they still on the ranch for a long time? Tell me about that.
So they weren't registered. Of course, I had no knowledge. The only thing I did do was there was a movie taking place with Billy Crystal at the time. And now the name escapes me. City Slickers, and part in that movie, he had to deliver a baby calf, and so I did my research before buying those 2 Longhorns for my wife Pam to make sure that I didn't have to help them have their calves. So that was one of the things that was really key for me, was to make sure that they would have their babies on their own without any assistance from me.
That's good to check out. Good to know.
Yeah. And so, but I was completely naive. When I bought the 2 Longhorns, Pam named them because they weren't registered. In today's environment, they had baby horns. I mean, they measured maybe 40 inches at the time, tip to tip. So that's how we got started. And then we went from that, and we kept one of them. One ended up getting sold, but the one of the cows ended up living here for its entire life. But it was at that point in time, and it was going through a series of progressions, but starting with unregistered and then going to registered. And then I was just completely upgrading the herd. It seemed like every 2 to 3 years, like selling those off, because it just didn't make sense. We ended up going to a seminar. If you remember, Dr. Bob Kropp, he was a professor up at Oklahoma State University, and he put on a seminar, and it was really helpful. I think it was at that point in time where it made sense to me, where he shared that you really have to have a plan. You need to come up with a plan that is good for you and where you want to go with your Longhorns. And so as a result, like I say, I sold them off And at one point in time, we got up to like 250 head.
So what years was this? Like, do you remember around the time that you went to the seminar by Dr. Kropp?
Yeah, I think it was put on in, I want to say, somewhere around 1998.
So tell me a little bit about, you went to his seminar and, the industry, or everyone refers to it as the industry, but, kind of the movers and shakers in the business and the events that there were. Tell me what the industry looked like back then.
It was interesting. Everybody's very friendly, and that was one of the things. It seemed like it was always the Longhorn industry was a very good community, and everybody was trying to learn and gain knowledge along the way. And we had, there's a variety of different breeders. That's when cloning was just got started in its infancy, and shortly after that, embryo transfers. There were a lot of different players that were in there back in the day. Some that were very knowledgeable, like Mike Bowman, and of course Bob Loomis. But you had other players like Ron Marquess and Rex Mosser, who had just gotten into the breed as well.
What did the animals look like? So the animals that you were seeing at the sales or maybe in the show ring, I know there weren't as many futurities nearly as, back then. What was kind of your typical or your Longhorn that everyone was going after?
There wasn't, I would say, Molly, there really wasn't a particular Longhorn like there is right now that was super popular. There was CP Boomerang was a very popular bull, but there were a lot of different bulls and were popular at that point in time. Like I say, there were certain breeders, just like I mentioned, Rex, and Rex was he was very interesting, very colorful. There were so many colorful people in the breed that have made it a lot very exciting. And Rex was always keen on wanting to buy the highest priced at the different sales, at the different auctions. But there wasn't like there is right now. It was a little bit different. There were a lot of different players there that were going down different paths.
One thing I remember about Rex, we're kind of going down memory lane here, but he called a part of his herd, was it Vicky's Menagerie? Is that what he kind of called his really longhorned animals? So, kind of a theme there. You started because of your wife. Rex started because of his.
That's right. And Rex was so colorful. He had his coach's gym shorts on at the sales. So there were so many different eclectic and interesting members of the Longhorn Association back then.
Well, what would you say, with so many cattle breeds out there, obviously you started because of your wife's ties to the university, but what is it about Texas Longhorns that's kept you committed to them for has it been 30 years or more?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, I can sum it up. In one simple, easy phrase is that they're so easy. They are easy to take care of. They're easy to manage. They're very curious, and they've just got great dispositions.
How do you feel like your appreciation for the breed has changed over time?
Well, it definitely has. Gosh, Molly, it's been, especially I will share with you, having started up, a federally inspected meat processing facility over the last 3-4 years, and getting a chance to meet face to face other cattle breeds, it just solidifies my appreciation for the Longhorns, that they're just so easy to work with. Even if they have 100-inch horns, they are just very docile, great dispositions, and as Eddie would say they're easy keepers.
There you go. So let's jump back to today. How would you describe your breeding philosophy?
I think my philosophy is, as we talked about, they've got a good disposition. I think that's got to be key. Okay. And I want them to be colorful, and have that potential, to get up to 90 to 100 inches or more. But it's having been in this breed for such a long time, they are consistently inconsistent. And I think that's one of the things that is really important for everybody to understand. So I think that's where, long term, that's where my focus is.
How would you say that your eye for cattle has changed with the experience that you've gained?
I think, I think I get smarter from the standpoint of, I can look at different pedigrees, and then, taking a look at the pedigrees, a lot of times I'll look at the owner or the breeder, and get a sense for their background or their experience, and then just see how they, whether I'm at somebody's ranch or I'm at a sale, just see how they act or react around people.
Thinking about hosting your own online sale?
With Hired Hand Live, you can run a standalone internet auction right from your ranch. No travel, no weather concerns, no space limitations.
You have the animals? We handle the technology.
It's stress-free, secure, and designed for livestock breeders.
Start your own sale at hiredhandlive.com.
What do you feel like are some things you notice in cattle now that you maybe didn't notice early on when you were kind of switching your herd over every few years?
Yeah. There are certain cows or bloodlines that people are following a little bit too much, or focusing on, as opposed to really looking at. And the nice thing is, with Hired Hand, is you can go to the Hired Hand websites, and you can look, and you can see, you look at their pedigree, you look at their ancestry, you can look at their offspring. There's so much more information that's available, so for you to make a better decision. And that's one of the things that I guess, having been in this industry for a long time, is you can kind of look and you can see, and you realize that there's always going to be, as opposed to just focusing on a popular breed or a specific animal or bull, is there's always going to be sleepers, okay? Because as I mentioned, they're consistently inconsistent. So even the most popular animals that are out there today, all of their offspring are not going to be as good as or better than they are. And I think that's one of the things you need to be aware of.
I think that's a great point. I just interviewed a guest a few weeks ago, and he was kind of alluding to the fact that he thought that there were maybe some patterns among birth order, so that first calf crop might be, just all bangers, top of the class, outstanding. But then, the next year you might get something totally different. And we kind of went down that rabbit hole. So it's interesting to hear you kind of parody that as well.
Yeah. And like I say, they are so inconsistent. I mean, I've had some really strong, popular bulls in our herd. And, the nice thing is I'll track all their data points, if you will, or my data points to look and see. And like I say, they are as inconsistent as they can be.
I have to ask you this question. What are the data points that you track?
Well, a lot of things that I do differently is, I'm wanting to make sure, that the bulls are prolific and that they can cover the cows quickly, easily. I think that's one of the things that's really important for me, to also be able to look and see, what clicks and what doesn't click, in terms of the sire as well as the dam. And so I'm sort of tracking that. I'm tracking the colors. I'm tracking the length of horns, all the different things. And just even like I say, to ensure that the disposition, we've got, one of the things that we do here differently is that when we are weaning our heifers or even potential herd sires, we put them in what Pam's called her charm school, and so it is they have to graduate from charm school to remain on Red Peak Ranch. And so there's a lot of things that go into making sure that they meet what Pam and I what our requirements are.
I love that. Do you have a sign for the barn or anything for their?
We do.
I love it. I love it.
The pasture, actually, for the pasture.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, getting back on track here a little bit, we're to our list of questions. What are some common mistakes that you have seen new breeders make, or what advice would you give them, or maybe your earlier self?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that I see, just going back to what I answered kind of previously, a little overconfidence in certain bloodlines. Again, realizing that in the Longhorn breed, there's no surefire way that you're going to have successful cows, that you're going to raise successful cows, because they are very inconsistent. And I think there is a little bit of overconfidence when I'm at some of the sales, and there are certain popular breeds there that people, they get carried away, and then for that reason they overpay, and they get disillusioned. So the thing that I would recommend to really new breeders is that go in and be thorough, but pick the ones that you like, not the ones that are the most popular, and get comfortable with those, because it's so easy to get disillusioned a lot of times when you're going to some of these sales and you have popular breeds of cows or heifers that are being sold, and the excitement of the sales may cause you to have regrets later on. Cognitive dissonance is a marketing term, because you have buyer's remorse.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about marketing and your background in that coming up here. But I have one last question before we kind of skip over the cattle. What does your typical day look like for you working with your cattle today?
That was an interesting question that you had, because it's the best example I can give you. I mean, they like I say, I go back to, they're so easy, Molly. At our ranch, we entertain a lot, and we have a lot of people come to Red Peak Ranch, and one of the big attractions, besides the geographics here, we're on the northern edge of the hill country, where it's very scenic and a lot of ridges, but that people are just drawn to how amazing the Longhorns are. So when we have visitors that are coming to the ranch to enjoy it, they just get amazed that they get to be up close and personal on some 90 to 100-inch Longhorns. And I treat them, I've trained the Longhorns so that we'll have little roundups, and I'll put visitors on four-wheelers to do a small little cattle drive, where I'll, make something up. We have to give somebody some shots, or we have to worm them, or we have to do some little, come up with some sort of interesting thing so that they hold on to it, that they cherish it as a memory. But the reality is that just last week, prior to this snowstorm that we had down here, I had to, I've got a herd of, I think there's about 70, and I just honk them. I open up a gate, and I'm moving them because I do a lot of rotational grazing. I just opened it up, and they follow me just like people's dogs. They just follow me right behind me, and I took them down to another pasture, opened that gate, and they walked right in. So that's how when I say they're easy, they're that easy.
I feel like you just gave away one of your trade secrets for the next time you have visitors and they think they're helping you. Well, let's talk a little bit about your marketing background. It's one thing that definitely I feel like sets you apart. You own a successful agency, which gave you a very different perspective early on. How did your marketing background influence how you approached the ranch from the very beginning?
Well, one of the things, I think that's a really good question, because the thing that I wanted to make sure of, whether it's the logo that the Red Peak Ranch has, or the domain names, that it would live on, so the whole thing is as opposed to having something, I don't know, a little catchy, that people will use, that you'll see on the names on the backs of boats. I live on a lake, and so when people name their boats, some of them are just like, you scratch your head and go, I don't know about that. And the same thing is true when you establish, what you want your website, your domain to be, what you want your logo to look like. You want it to sustain itself and to be recognizable and eye-catching. And so that's one of the things that, as a marketeer, that we're always counseling our clients on, so that they don't get into, what's trendy today. It's kind of like, I've seen this so many times on the business side of things. It's kind of, I use analogies, kind of like fishing on a party boat. That all of a sudden they're catching him over on this side. So everybody runs over to that side of the boat because that's the popular side. And then somebody catches one over here and they all run over to the other side. And so I think that the thing is that you really want it to be thought out, and you want to see what makes sense to you. And the thing is, it's really influenced at Red Peak Ranch how we sell our Longhorns, because I would much rather sell, and that's where my focus has been, is to have people come to the website and to go online, because then I can really ask them questions to make sure that we match them up with the Longhorns that they're gonna enjoy and that are going to be successful in their program. And I think that's one of the things that's really driven us. Not taking anything away from sales. I like to buy at the sales, but I'm not as fond of selling my Longhorns at the auctions.
Which came first, your logo or your 2 Longhorns that you purchased for Pam's birthday?
I would say the 2 Longhorns came first.
Okay. Interesting, because one of the things I really like about your logo is that it doesn't have a Longhorn in it. And I know that sounds funny, but so many, we work on so many logos even in the office here that, it's really important to folks to have that branding in it, which I totally understand. But I think part of the strength of yours over the years, has been just that it's a strong logo. You don't have to have a horn in it, or you didn't try to turn the tail of the R into a horn, anything like that. So I've just always been curious which came first. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It was one of those things that had just, in working with, the creative team at our agency, it just made sense. And that was a lot of things that we've done, that kind of reflect that. And so it makes it, I think that the thing about our logo was to make it look fun and interesting. So that was the purpose of Red Peak Ranch in the first place, is that it be a lot of fun. And so that hopefully that logo reflects the experience that you would have when you come to Red Peak.
Well, tell everyone what your domain name is so we can all be jealous.
It's TexasLonghornBreeder.com.
So you were very early, obviously, to recognize the importance of strong domain names. Why did that matter to you? What did you know that, no one else knew at the time, and can attribute to your marketing agency and your knowledge?
Well, again, I think one of the things that, and we're going to play into that. I mean, when you start looking at the websites and you want to see what is easy that you can get right off the tip of your tongue, that you could establish that. And the other thing is that we, like I say, I learned early on that I thoroughly enjoy selling Longhorns, but I like to sell them individually to individuals that you can kind of match up, like I say, what their interests were, what's their attractions. As you know, the last thing that, the Longhorns, every Longhorn has its own personality. And so I think that's the thing I like to do with new buyers, especially, I've sold to a lot of first-time buyers, and I want to make sure that I'm selling a Longhorn where their personality kind of matches up with who the buyers are.
What advice would you give to breeders today about choosing a good domain name, or if they're deciding on a brand or a logo? I feel like all three of those things probably have similar advice.
Yeah, and I think that's where you really want to look at it. Uh, Molly, I think you really want to determine, and that's what's really hard for people, because I think they jump on something very quickly, and I think you want to really look at it and say, what is your intent? What are you trying to achieve? And if you do those things, then it could have easily have been, you see this a lot, Mike and Pam's Ranch. I think that you really want to think things through, as opposed to them just fly by the seat of your pants, because it'll bite you. And even though, when we started into the Longhorn business, I mean, gosh, it clearly was a hobby. I mean, when I bought the two for Pam, I never imagined that we would ever have at one point in time 250 Longhorns. I go back to Dr. Bob Crop. You got to have a plan, and that's where it really made sense. Like I say, starting with the logo, starting with the name of your ranch, and then having it progress. And that's the same thing that we've done in all the different websites that we have, whether it be Red Peak Ranch or eathealthybeef.org, which is Chisholm Trail grass-fed beef, or Local Cuts Meat Company. It's a really well thought out program to position so that it isn't a short-term trendy kind of thing.
Well, and I feel like kind of an underlying theme of your answers too, you keep tying everything back to how you like to get to know the people who are purchasing from you and make sure it's a good match. So I would imagine you're with your marketing hat on back then, you also kind of set out some value propositions for yourselves, or, some goals, or I don't know if goals is the right word, but, pillars that you've stuck to over the years. And it sounds like that hasn't changed either, which I think a lot of folks fast forward past that as well, right? They're in such a hurry to start their matings or their pairings or get their first few that they kind of forget why they wanted to start in the first place, what they wanted to stand for.
Right. They get excited. And I, again, the thing that I've realized is that, it is just like the Longhorn business is like going to Las Vegas, and even more so when people are buying young 2-3-year-old heifers. The life of these animals, they live up to 25 years of age, and I know this because I've personally experienced it. And guess what? They're going to change over time, and some are going to be really successful. And a lot of those Longhorns that looked like they had the potential, it didn't happen. And so, I think that that's the biggest problem I think that the Longhorn industry faces is we have to realize that they are consistently inconsistent, because I see this a lot of times, and you see this in at the sales, and they'll talk about the sister of this sister had 100-inch horns, okay, and that doesn't mean this particular animal that's in the ring, okay, in the sale program is going to look like her sister. I mean, we know this. I mean, we can look at Brad Pitt's brother, or look at Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, his father is I think he's like 5'8". I mean, that's where the thing you have to realize is that there's not going to be I've got an inside line that this particular cow is going to be successful, or this particular bull is going to be successful, because they will always surprise you.
Some of the strongest advocates for the Texas Longhorn breed aren't breeders yet. They're young people who already love these cattle.
For 30 years, the Longhorn Project has given students a chance to raise, care for, and show Texas Longhorns, while also learning agriculture, business, leadership, and responsibility.
It's a program that builds confidence, character, and the next generation of cattlemen and cattlewomen.
As they celebrate 30 years in 2026, learn how you can support their mission or get involved at thelonghornproject.com. One more marketing question here before we move on. I feel like you segued really good into the beef and the processing, but I have one more question I want to ask first.
Yeah, sure.
So, you and I have known each other for a long time. And at some point, I don't remember exactly when, at some point you finally transitioned your marketing agency website to Hired Hand. We would have a lot of conversations, and, you had an agency in-house that did a great job. So I'm just curious if you can share with our listeners what kind of finally drove that decision to switch over to a Hired Hand site.
Actually, Molly, it was a no-brainer. I mean, we were doing it. We started out because we were in the infancy. But one of the things that I realized right on is that Hired Hand, you guys were so committed, and talk about, being, looking down the future. I mean, I can still remember you and Jamie, and there may have been a couple of other people in the background, but I didn't think there were at that point in time when I first got to meet with you, and how you guys have really, you were committed, you stayed committed. And it was so easy for me it was no brainer to switch over and let Hired Hand completely, you handle our website, and it's been terrific. And I will tell you this, it's worth, to me, my annual, I don't know, you call it a renewal or subscription. That's the easiest check to write every year, Molly. I mean, it really truly is, because, it's so good, in how, you can access it. I mean, I'm constantly on the website, making additions, making changes, making ads, and applying that, adding different photos, or registering the new heifer calves from this particular season. And I will tell you, it is really nice, because it's so easy to get in and to make those types of moves, ads, and changes, if you will, and to have worked with Hired Hand all these years. It's a delight.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. I think being, with both of us being in marketing, one thing we're used to is we have different software for different things, right? So for social media, we might use one software. For search engine optimization, we might use another. For podcast editing, we use another. What do you think, or how important do you think having a livestock specific platform for your website and for other breeders' websites is over those folks who say, well, I can go do this in GoDaddy for cheaper, or, I can do this on my own?
It's not even a fair fight, Molly. I mean, Hired Hand, gosh, I was just chuckling because, to have GoDaddy handle it, no way. It's just no way. I mean, it's not even a fair fight. I mean, Hired Hand, you guys are so knowledgeable, and if there's any changes, if I've had any issues, which, on occasion in a very, very blue moon, and then I can always reach out and you guys can give me tech support to on a particular animal that maybe wasn't part, they weren't on a website that I'd picked up at a sale or something like that, and I'd wanted to add them, and there was some sort of glitch that's attached. But gosh, you guys you're terrific.
Well, thank you. Let's get into what I know our listeners are going to, really want to soak up this knowledge that they're about to hear. So we've alluded a few times that you are very knowledgeable in Longhorn beef processing, marketing. So to you, Longhorns isn't just about raising it, but you wanted to solve some of the problems around processing and marketing. What challenges do breeders face when it comes to processing, especially with horned cattle? And then we'll get into a little bit about the solutions you've provided.
Okay. The biggest challenge is you have to realize that the Longhorn beef is very, very healthy. I actually have had all the cuts tested by a third-party lab, and they're just off the charts from that standpoint. But the challenge that you have with the processing industry, if you will, okay, that it is so focused for meat cattle and has not been for Longhorn cattle. So the challenge that you face is with the processors. They want to do it their way, and it's one way. And it typically has to do with non-horned cows, okay? And they think that dealing with horned cows and all the rumors in the cattle industry, that they're mean, they're hard to work with, all of those things are just ridiculous. But the thing you have to realize is that typically your Longhorn cattle are going to be they're leaner, okay. They're not like your big fat roly poly beef cows, and they don't act that way either. And a lot of your big beef cows in processing facilities, they've got cattle prods, and they do even have, you could just go to your local sale barn and you look at the beef cattle in there, and you're going to have the handlers in there, and they're going to have cattle prods. Okay. And all that does is unbeknownst to the processing facility, it provides a lot of stress. And it makes it very difficult. You start putting a cattle prod on a Longhorn, and it's a whole different deal.
Imagine managing your animals and updating your website without needing any tech experience.
That's exactly why we built Hired Hand software. It's designed for breeders, not web designers.
Upload animals, track records and new calves, update photos, all in just a few clicks.
Whether you're brand new or growing a multi-breed program, we make sure your online presence is easy, modern, and manageable.
Visit hiredhandsoftware.com and see how simple it can be to keep your herd and your website up to date. How difficult do you feel like it is to find processors willing or able to handle Longhorns? Because I know that's a question we get asked so frequently especially from newer breeders who want to, just be able to process a few head for themselves, not even, to have a beef operation at farmers markets or whatnot.
Yeah. I would say it's going to be pretty challenging. It's, you're going to have to go and talk to, the processing facilities near you, and they're truly, you're going to have to, the cuts have to be made differently on Longhorn cattle than they can on your regular beef cows. And that's going to be a big challenge. I will just say, that at Local Cuts Meat Company, I mean, we're a federally processed meat processing facility. The reason why I started, because all these things that you just mentioned is that they wanted to do it their way, and not my way. Okay. They didn't know how to handle longhorns, and many times the animals would get stuck. I even had with some of the processing facilities that I worked where we lost cows, they died because they got stressed so much. And that was extremely scary, as a breeder. The thing is that at Local Cuts, I mean, we've had some of the Longhorn breeders. I know that we process more Longhorn cattle than any other processing facility in the United States. And that's because we really set up our pens to be able to handle that. And we've gotten some breeders all the way from Connecticut that have brought their cattle in because it's so easy to get them in and to cut them to get your cuts the way you want to have them, as opposed to the way that processing facility knows how to cut them.
Where is your processing plant located, just for our listeners who haven't had a chance to Google it yet?
Yeah, it's actually located in a small town called Zephyr, Texas. And if you look if you put your finger on where you think the middle of Texas is, that's where it is. So it's centrally located in Texas, and it's just set up where we've got, large pens that are set up so that if you need to bring them in, 2 or 3 days ahead of time, they can be brought in, and so that they're not put in a stressful situation, and they can be fed so that they can get comfortable with their surroundings. The thing is that the way that we have our facility set up so that we've had, gosh, I can tell you, Molly, we've probably had the longest horned Longhorn has probably been 115 inches tip to tip so far, maybe even longer than that. That we've had at our facility, and of course, all sizes in between.
I forget the exact term you used just a few minutes ago. You said that the plant is federally, what was the word?
Federally inspected.
Federally inspected. So
Yeah.
Talk to me about kind of why that is important for folks that may not know. And then is that connected or tied to like the USDA approval as well?
It is. So we have a USDA federal inspector at our facility during all hours of operations, and so the processes that you have to go by to be a federally inspected facility are very rigorous, but it really ensures the safety of the meat, no matter where it's shipped throughout the United States or throughout the world. So it's just a rigorous process that all cattle at Local Cuts Meat Company go through.
That's also important for breeders who would bring their animals there, because it can be really hard to obtain that USDA seal at like your local locker if you want to go out and sell your own, branded beef, right?
Absolutely. And here's the other thing is that I know a lot of people will position the meat and selling it as Longhorn beef. The success that I've experienced is I sell it as grass-fed beef. It's again, from a marketing standpoint, just what we talked about before is you don't have to educate them. The marketplace has been educated on what grass-fed is, so you don't have to re-educate them, or you don't have to be going through that education process about Longhorn beef. So, how I always talk to consumers, I talk to them about grass-fed beef, okay, and then I can show them the nutritional facts on the different cuts so that they can see just how healthy it is. I mean, not only is it healthy, but gosh, the thing that I will tell you is that the tenderloins from Longhorn cattle are just amazing. But it's important in how they're cut, so that like with Longhorn cattle, we will cut them into fillets. They'll be butterflied. I especially like to have them bacon wrapped, and we use very high premium bacon to wrap them so that they taste as good as a fillet would taste in a 5-star restaurant.
So I feel like a lot of the things that you've mentioned, there had to have been quite a learning curve for, right? So your time in Longhorns has probably taught you a lot of this. From the time you and Pam decided that this was something you wanted to open or, create, till when it actually, you opened your doors and could start accepting cattle, how long of a process was that?
Oh, gosh. It was kind of interesting, Molly. With the advertising agency, we'd just been acquired, back in 2018. And I had been, I guess you could say, as one of my side gigs was selling the Longhorn beef as grass-fed beef. And we sell, and it's under a brand we call Chisholm Trail, which again, has some history to it. So, it's very recognizable. The website that we have is eathealthybeef.org. But what we did is that I was working with other processing facilities, and like I say, it was very challenging because there was only one way. It was their way. I recognized that you have to cut the Longhorns. The meat needs to be cut differently. And I learned that through personal experience. And one of the things that ended up happening with COVID, okay, the demand for meat took off. And I was just one of those, I'm just one of those entrepreneurs that just said, gosh, why don't I just go and build a brand new facility? And I think I know it will help the Longhorn industry. Okay. And it'll be something that I can do. And,
because you weren't busy enough.
I wasn't busy enough. I just have this entrepreneurial spirit, and it just worked out really well. And, we've gotten it up where, we do, I've got 40 employees there, and of course we handle all kinds of, cattle breeds. But one of the things that we've even done is that, again, paying attention. And I think that's one of the key things. You got to keep your fingertips on what the pulse is occurring in the marketplace. But we've at Local Cuts, we've acquired new technology there to even make to accelerate the aging process. Realize that with the Longhorn cattle that are being processed, you don't process, you don't hang them. They always talk about hanging. You don't hang them as long. Like I say, we've got some very state-of-the-art technology equipment that we use to make the meat more tender and more flavorful. And I've got some very experienced butchers, meat cutters that are on staff that really know how to provide any kind of exotic cut that you would want to have, down to the most basic, but how to cut the Longhorn meat differently. And we've got a lot of Longhorn members that are bringing their beef there. But I would say back to your point that you mentioned is that the thing that you have to realize in this breed, you can't keep them all, and some of them are just not going to end up like you had hoped they were going to end up, and so you have to have that understanding and realize that what do I do with them? Okay, and I would say to anybody, first, take one in, have it processed, and try it yourself. Okay. And get a really understanding of what you want to do. Okay. Like I say, we have other producers, Longhorn producers that feed out their Longhorns. Okay. And so that they're grain fed. It takes a little bit longer, but the meat is, like I say, very flavorful and very tender, but it really depends on what you want to do. But try it first so you get a better understanding.
Where would you tell breeders who want to start? What would your advice be? Like, obviously, you just gave some great advice of, thinking through things, trying one at first. But beyond that, if they want to have a plan in place for selling beef, what would your advice be?
My advice would be, what do you want to do? Again, there's so many different sales strategies that you can have with Longhorns. I've seen this, that you can sell to restaurants, you can sell to restaurants, retail outlets, sell at wholesale, you can sell direct to consumer. You mentioned you could take it and sell it at farmers markets. It really depends on what you as an individual, where do you want to put your time and effort? Okay. And what may be, that you may not be as interested as you. There's a lot of people that I don't want to spend the time going to a farmer's market. Okay, that's fine. Then what may drive you is to selling direct to consumer or selling into retailers and to restaurants. So again, you got to determine where do you want to spend your time and effort. And I can tell you, it is, I'll go back to my original statement, the original question that you asked. It is so easy if you look at where do you want to spend your time and where do you want to focus your time and efforts on. And for me, as an example, the reason, and I realize is that I had to taste the meat first. Okay. that had to be a little bit of a challenge because, my wife, Pam, again, the Longhorns are very sacred. Oh my God, you can't eat those. But now they're so healthy, and so good for you, and they taste so good. And like I say, my strategy was I didn't want to have my effort being focused on going and selling direct to consumers or selling at farmers markets or anything like that. But I wanted to sell it to retailers and to restaurants. And so that's where I marketed and spent my efforts. And so now, it's just making deliveries. So you're not, that's the biggest time that's being spent is delivering that. And so it appeals to me. Okay. As opposed to spending my time, on weekends, I'd rather spend them with the Longhorns, taking out people and having them, get up close and personal with the Longhorns, and then realizing that you always have to have a place with the Longhorns because all of them aren't going to be winners. They can't all be winners. Okay. And that's what I would say that part of your plan needs to be is you got to have a strategy is that where's my cut going to be? And if they don't make the cut, where do I want them to go? Either you take them to places like Chisholm Trail, or you set up your own program that appeals to how you want to spend your time and effort. Okay. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does. You actually answered
very long-winded.
No, it was great. It was great. Is there anything, before we switch gears and talk about a different topic, is there anything I haven't asked you about Longhorn lean beef or the processing or anything that you think our listeners would want to hear?
I would say, especially with, if you're thinking about it, don't hesitate to give me a call. I mean, I really truly want to help people in the Longhorn breed be successful, no matter what, whether it's with the registered animals or if it's with, some sort of a beef program. So I want them to be successful, and that's where I would say if they do have questions, I can get even more specific with them on what to do and how to do it. But I go back, and like I say, and I brought this up, Bob Kropp was so influential to me that it really helped me in my decision making about Longhorns happen through the years.
Outside of cattle, you and Pam are big into CrossFit. So let's talk a little bit about how that mindset carries over. So what has CrossFit taught you that applies directly to ranching?
When you asked that question, I thought it was a very interesting question, because in CrossFit, it's a community. Okay. And the thing about CrossFit that I think is really important is, it's a journey, and the same thing, you've got to be, you're surrounded, they say misery loves company. And I mean, it is challenging because, CrossFit is it's not for everyone. It is for me and Pam, but it's a community. And the same thing is true in the Longhorn industry. It's a community. But the thing that there's so many similarities. If you look at Longhorns, I've never seen a super fat Longhorn in my life. Okay. And they're fit. And so it's just appeals to Pam and I. Say, we've got fit cattle. We've got to stay fit ourselves. Okay. You like I say, it's a journey. You can't just get fit and there you are. Okay. You have to continue down that path, and it's being consistent and, being dependable. And the same thing is true with the Longhorn. If you're consistent, okay, in your plan and in your practices, you can be very successful. Okay. Those that are short term, like I say, they go in, and you've seen this many times, Molly, is they go to a sale, and there's a very popular young 2-year-old heifer that is sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. And they get disillusioned and they get out. Okay. And I will say there's so many similarities, like I say, with CrossFit. You stay the course. You got to grind it out. And I would say the same thing is true, in the Longhorn industry. If you establish what your plan is, and just keep on going forward, press forward. You're not always going to get a winner. You're going to have to, it goes through trial and error. Like I say, I've, over the years, I've sold off, and I said, that didn't work. Okay. And so I had to start over and build on top of that, and go out and you said, well, that bull didn't really click and do what I was hoping, because I wanting all Shaquille O'Neal's, and I got, just standard size, normal run of the mill Longhorns. So the whole thing is that you've got to press forward. You've got to be consistent. You got to keep marching forward. And I think that's the same thing with CrossFit. And guess what? CrossFit, plays so well because the Longhorn beef is so healthy for you. Okay. That you can even eat it every day. It's healthier than almost all cuts except fish. Okay. I mean, it's so healthy for you. And that's where, there's a lot of similarities between CrossFit and the Longhorns.
I feel like another parallel might be immediate results, right? You can't go to one CrossFit class and see, you're not going to have bulging biceps after one class. Just like with Longhorns, you might not hit a home run on your very first, pairing or purchase.
Very true. And it's so true. I mean, that's the reality. But and that's where I think it needs to be. We need to help the industry realizing that they all aren't going to be winners. The next cow, they have the potential, okay, but they're not all going to be the winners that you would hope for. So you can't buy into the whole sales pitch, okay. I mean, we've been to so many different sales where they think this is a proven winner, that there is just no such thing as a proven winner in the Longhorn industry.
It's good marketing language, right?
Yeah, that's true. Very good marketing language.
Well, you and Pam also love to travel. How does getting away impact how you think about the ranch?
Oh, it's terrific. As a matter of fact, one of the trips we did last summer, we went to Spain, okay, and I ran with the bulls, and it was such a great experience, and it was a lot of fun. So a lot of things like that take place. Again, in that particular case, you're trying to make sure that you don't get the horn. Okay. But having been around, Longhorns, which it was so exciting too, because being, it's over in the northeast corner of Spain. And of course, that's where the Longhorns originated, was from, Spain and Portugal. So, it was fascinating to see the ancestry, and you could really see it and understand where the horn breed has moved in different areas and in different parts of the country, from the fighting bulls in Spain to your very docile Texas Longhorns. Okay. So that was where, we've done a lot of different trips like that, whether it be to run with the bulls or to the Galapagos. I mean, that was a terrific experience. Again, just seeing what, if you look at the different animals and the different breeds, and you look at the Texas Longhorns and how how the different animals have migrated, or I wouldn't say migrated, or mutated to different areas. So it's fascinating to see and to recognize that when you're in different parts of the country or the world.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
What do you hope that the future looks like for Texas Longhorns as a breed?
I would like to see the community kind of get together and realize, there's been a lot of conflict that has occurred. Okay. And, I think that if you look and say, what can we do to promote this breed, to make it more successful? I mean, the thing is that I think that there's a lot of opportunities to market and bring first time breeders, new Longhorn breeders in. But I think there needs to be a little bit more education, and it should never be about dollars and cents. And I think that some of the things that have occurred in this industry is people have jumped into it thinking that it's a dollars and cents business, and it's not. It's about enjoying the breed and enjoying these fine, majestic animals, and appreciate them, enjoy them, experience them. For me, it was never about whether I can make any money at this or not. It was really about the experience of being around these majestic animals, and to be able to share that and to share that experience. Molly, I can't tell you, as a result of that, I have had so many people that have come out to Red Peak Ranch, and this is, many people that have come here, and I take them out and get them to be up close and personal with the Longhorns, and they have gone on to buy a ranch, to buy Longhorn cattle. They have enjoyed that experience, and I think that's what it's all about. It's enjoying the experience. We're only here for a short period of time. We got to enjoy the ride, and I would say that one of the big enjoyments that Pam and I get is coming out to Red Peak Ranch and going out, whether it be going to charm school, sitting down with the young little heifer calves and getting them to be as friendly and used to being around people as it is to bringing them out with the Longhorn cattle that, we have some that are over 100 inches tip to tip, and they come right up to you, and they'll eat right out of your hand. It's that kind of experience that makes it memorable to everybody. And that's what it should be all about.
I think that's great insight, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your perspective and the lessons you've learned along your many years in breeding. I think this was a really valuable conversation. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to From the Pasture, and we'll see you next time.
And thank you, Molly.